So in the previous video, we did Docker Compose and we used the Postgres database and explored how to go about using this locally on our machine. So what I want you to do now is create a commit out of this so that we are able to save these changes into our repository. Now I'm using a separate tool to manage all of this, but you don't really need to use these tools. You can use the regular git commands like git add dot or git commit -m and a message and git push, etc. So I encourage you to go back to the previous video where we used all these commands and create a commit for yourself, because next we are going to be running some tests and we want to keep on saving all our commits as we go on. Now, before we actually run through some of the code, let's get a quick introduction to how Python works and some of the programming techniques that we use within Python, and then we will move on to writing tests. So in here, I have a few of these statements that I've already written out, but we'll focus on each one of them as we go on. Now, the way I'm going to run this is if you already have your Python virtual environment and everything set up from the previous video, you should be good to go as well. But otherwise, I encourage you to go through the extension and run through the Python installer for virtual environment and have that set up. Now, the way I'm going to run this is by using Shift Enter on my keyboard, which so you'll see what happens next. So if I just type in 1+1 in this intro.py file that I've created and press Shift and Enter, you'll see a new Python terminal opens up, and then we immediately have the result 2 over here, which is 1+1. And you see here I have a new terminal called Python over here as well. So this is the way I like to run my Python code, which is very interactively. Of course, if it gets too long, then you have to go through and write some specific test to test the functionality of a specific function. But for us, where we want to learn the basics of Python, this is more than enough. So the first statement, like you saw, Python is easily able to run the commands like this, which is 1+1. Now, you might have also seen in previous section where we were importing few modules when we ran through the Fast API. So this is how to import a module. So we have OS, which is a module that comes within Python. And we can import that by simply calling import.os. So in this OS module, what we have are all the functions that people have built, and then they've pre-built into a module that we don't have to write again. We can just reference this module and get access to all the functions and variables within this module. So if I run this import OS, you see that it was successfully run over here. Now I can run this get cwd function, which is get current working directory. And if I press enter on this, you'll see the location that I'm working from, or the location of this particular file. So that is all about module and how to import, and you'll see these statements at the top of the file usually where we're importing all these functions. And you can create your own modules as well as you build your project and import it in different parts of your project as well. Now we have a few other simple mathematical functions, so you can use it as like a calculator. So you can get values like this: 4 times 6, 22/7, etc. You get the point. Now the next one is instead of writing all these out like this, you can assign it to a variable like this. So if I assign number 5 to go into A, so we have now A, which is having this 5 value. And if I do a print A, so we'll be able to print the value of A within our console. Again, print, you might ask, where is this coming from? This is actually default to Python, where you can use all these print statements to print whatever function you're trying to do or debug your code. Now we can also do mathematical functions on this, so which is A plus A. We are giving it 5 over here into A, and then A plus A gives us 10 over here. And there are a few logical operators as well. So we can see if 3 equals 3, which says it is true, and if we can also check if it's not equal. And these are just the basics, right? So there are a list of these logical operators that you can work through as well. So in this section, we're just going through the basics to understand how to go about run a basic Python code, or if you see any Python code, you should be able to understand some of these. Next, we have something called as an array. So instead of assigning just a number to a variable, you can assign a series of numbers, letters, and dictionaries and arrays themselves. So these can get really complicated or really simple depending on your use case. So here I'm saying x is equal to a and b and 2. So if I do that, then x is here. Now I can sort by x as well. So imagine if these were all numbers. So instead of 1, a, b and 2, if it was just 1, 3 and 2, imagine this was the case, then if I do sorted x, we get 1, 2 and 3. Reversed x is very similar, we get a reverse list of this. And x dot count, if we want to count how many of 3 appears in here, so if we do that, we obviously have only 1 of 3 in this list, so that is what we have. We can also find out how many elements in the list we have, which is by len x, which gives you the length of this list. And then we can finally access the first element or any of the element within these list as well. So if I just do x of 0, we get 0. Or if I do x of 2, you should get 2 over here. Now mind you, this list actually starts the count from 0, so it's not 1, second and the third element. Is actually the 0 element, the first element and the second element, and so on. So you'll get used to all of this once you get comfortable writing Python. So that was list. Now we also have something called as a dictionary. So dictionary is you give it a key and a value over here. So a is 1, b is 2, maybe 3, c is 3, and so on. You can have dictionaries like this, and you can do a lot more with these dictionaries as well. It gets really useful. And here if we just want to look at all the keys of these dictionaries that we have, we can just say a dot keys. And maybe if we just want to look at 1, 2 and 3, so that would be the values. So you see here a dot keys returned a, b and c, whereas a dot values returned 1, 2 and 3. And you can of course access the first element's value. So if you want to get to 1, you just do a and then give it the key, which is a over here, or this can be b or c. Now again, you don't have to remember or try all this out yourself, because at this point it might be confusing as to where you would actually use these things. So we'll kind of keep this at a very high level, and then when we do get to the coding bit, you will understand how all these things are working together. Now, if you have some of these statements, you can either run them on their own, but you can also put them in a separate function like this, where you define a function, you give it a name. So this can be whatever name you choose. And then within there, you can just copy all these statements and put them in here. And you can have as many as statements here, and you can have one operation or multiple operations. And then once you define these functions, you can just call that function name followed by these parentheses, and that should be good. So if I initialize this, so now we have a function defined. Now if I just call this line up, so now if I just run this line, you see there is a statement over here. Now I can keep running these line as many times as I want, and then it just keeps giving me the same output. So anything that you feel like you're going to repeat by writing outside like this, you can put them in a function. Now there is a way to put all these functions into a bigger class. So that is where the class comes in, and here we are getting into the object-oriented kind of programming style of working with these objects over here. So we don't really have to struggle to understand all these things yet, or you don't have to put too much effort into understanding all these things at this stage. These are kind of maybe intermediate to advanced stage Python codes, but I've just put this here nonetheless, just so that you are aware of something like this is possible. So here I'm defining a class called car, and in that we have a few functions like get car, set model of the car, get the model of the car, etc. We're also defining a few of these, like what is the make of the car, what is model, what was the year, etc. There are a few attributes like protected, private and public. We'll see all of these when we do get to this stage, but you can initialize this car class. Now what I can do is I can assign all of this values, Toyota Corolla 2022 as a car model, and then put that in my car variable. So if I do that, now my car has that. Now if I do my car dot get make, so you should see it says Toyota, which is my car, which is a car model, and then get make is make over here. Again, we'll work through all of this, or if you have more time, spend some time on understanding what classes are, but at this stage you probably don't need this yet. So we'll keep moving, and let me print out some of these as well. So if I do my car dot year, we get the year. And then in future lessons and maybe in intermediate section on this, we'll cover protected, private, and public kind of attributes and what they are, when they are useful, how to use this car and build off of it, like inheriting or extending these classes as well. We'll look more of these in the future section. But immediately next, what we're going to run is start by building out our API, and we'll start by doing some test driven development, which is a really good way of building your application. So we'll start with that next.